Well, hi. It's been 2 weeks since the last time we actually talked about the portfolio and the results. And so here I am to present the results again. And obviously it's on display. But if you look at how we did over the last 2 weeks, so from 9/8/26 to 9/09, the return for the portfolio was, again, this is just looking at 2 weeks. It was 1.31%. And the S&P 500 returned 0.8%. If you look at the 12 months, over the last 12 months, the portfolio has returned 61.59%, and the S&P 500's returned 16.37%. And if you look at it since the beginning of the year, since January, beginning January of the year, the portfolio has returned 28.24, and the S&P 500's returned 9.26%. So we're doing good. I mean, and a goal, like I've mentioned before, is to be 2 to 3 times what the S&P 500 return is. And again, I'm using the S&P 500 as my barometer because, again, my portfolio is based on some of the same securities, but it's also a little broader than the S&P 500. But the S&P 500 is a great index. Obviously, it's dominated by technology companies nowadays, especially the top seven technology companies. But it's still a great barometer of actually of what you should be getting as far as an equity return. And my portfolio, again, it's got a little bit of obviously it's got US equities, but it also has equities outside of the US, as well as focuses on commodities, a little bit of real estate, and different sectors, of the world and different industries, obviously, that are actually, that could be focused on. And as I've mentioned many times, the portfolio is actually constructed by using some fundamental analysis, some very basic principles of how you should construct a portfolio. And then on top of that, I do overlay some AI intelligence to really pick and choose the most favorable, equities for the upcoming 2 to 4 weeks. And again, I'm looking at, normally I come back and present this every 2 weeks because I do like to make some adjustments every 2 weeks. But in reality, the design of the portfolio is to be for over 4 weeks. But I do make adjustments again every 2 weeks just to get it just right. So basically, just re-optimize it a little bit every 2 weeks. I mean, so again, these are the returns. And then as far as for the upcoming 2 weeks, this is what the focus will be on. And again, you have the securities that I really like, as well as the percentages that you should be invested in as far as these individual securities. And again, they're mostly ETFs. The only individual company in here is really MKL. Everything else is really an ETF. And I prefer ETFs because, again, and very focused ETFs because they provide some nice breadth into different companies within that specific area that I want to focus on. And so you don't have to really, and so because they've got some breadth to them as far as the individual companies that are within that, let's say that ETF, that specific ETF that's tied to a very specific sector or area of the world. You don't get as much of the individual company risk as you would if you were just invested, obviously, in one company or an individual company within that ETF or that sector. And so I do like the ETFs. It kind of broadens it out. Maybe you might not get as much of return or as high of return if you would have picked the right individual equity within that area, that sector, that area of the world. But again, again, from a risk standpoint, I think they're just much better to go with. And so again, this is what I'm saying it should be for the next 2 weeks. And again, in 2 weeks from now, we'll do this again, and we'll see how these did, and then we'll also we'll make some adjustments on these as to what it should be for the upcoming 2 weeks after that. All right, thank you.